Hey everybody, welcome back to Checkerboard Chat. In case you've forgotten since last Sunday, I'm Tyler Wombles. I'm the sports editor at the Daily Beacon. This is DeMichael Cole. He's the assistant sports editor at the Daily Beacon. Every week on Checkerboard Chat, we're going to be breaking down Tennessee athletics, talking all things about Vols, whether that's football, volleyball, soccer, intramurals, just anything we want to talk about. Also, just any sort of sports news. DeMichael, there seems to be a pretty big football game tomorrow. I can't think of it right now.
Yeah,
what it is?
I don't know, but Tennessee fans have been waiting it's a Labor Day game or
Yeah.
something.
Oh yeah, it's against Georgia Tech. Yeah, that's right.
what it is. That triple
yeah,
option offense.
Yeah. That's all anyone's talking about. And we're gonna be talking about it. So I guess I'm throwing shade on myself. But yeah. So the Vols are taking on Georgia Tech tomorrow at 8 p.m. in Atlanta. It's gonna be the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. The Chick-fil-A kickoff already had their first game last night. Was Florida State and Alabama. Alabama won that game, so Tennessee is going to be taking on Georgia Tech tomorrow night. DeMichael, just starting out, what do you think the biggest storylines are for this game?
Well, for me, I just want to see Tennessee's defensive line, how they will play against Tech's undersized offensive linemen, but they're cut blockers. That's something that Tennessee won't go against pretty much for the rest of the season. So just basically how the defensive line reacts, and Brady Hoke, the defensive line coach, has said he wants to rotate up to 10 defensive linemen, but they're not there yet. And the way Georgia Tech run the ball, they run the ball 77% of the time last season. So with the way they run the ball, you're gonna need defensive linemen, and if Tennessee doesn't have that depth, it could be a long day. So we'll see what kind of depth they'll have and how the defensive linemen play against that triple option and that cut blocking.
For sure, and actually both teams this past week did release their depth charts, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. First of all, with Georgia Tech's depth chart, they actually have 4 quarterbacks listed starting. So Tennessee might have a little bit of an idea. I'm sure they've done a little bit more film study than most of us, although I did do a lot of film study for that scouting report that was in the football guide. But yeah, so Georgia Tech really has 4 options at quarterback. I know we mentioned one time that one of those players is a former running back that they converted to quarterback. So if that shows you how their offense is.
Yeah.
DeMichael, what do you think will be some of the keys for Tennessee, particularly on the defense, to stopping that Georgia Tech offense?
For the front, for the linebackers and the defensive linemen, you can't play hero ball. You have to play your keys. Every now and then there may be a tendency for someone to try to make the superstar play, but you have to play your role, because with this offense, it's so technical. A linebacker, if he's out of position, then boom, that's a 20-yard gain just that quick. And just in the back end, you can't lose focus. I know it's been a big thing about how this team, they'll run the ball 10 plays in a row, and then the next thing you know, they'll try to pop a big play-action pass over the top of your head. So for the secondary, they just can't be lulled to sleep in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely true. I think one key note is that Darren Kirkland Jr., who was on Tennessee's depth chart as starting at middle linebacker, is actually out for the season with it was a knee injury, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had surgery on his knee a couple days ago. Butch Jones announced, I think it was on Wednesday of last week, that Kirkland Jr. will miss the rest of the season. So that means that Colton Jumper, who's a senior linebacker, who's actually a walk-on, he played high school football at Baylor in Chattanooga, he will actually be starting at middle linebacker for the Vols, I guess for the foreseeable future at least. Obviously Jumper, he's a guy that has played on and off in his career. He actually had a really big game last season against the Florida Gators, which I guess would be the game that you would choose to have a big performance against.
Yeah, of course.
So he does have that experience, and he will be getting the start at that position. Like DeMichael said, there's going to be a lot of keys for those linebackers to read. Obviously, you're going to have that defensive line in there filling holes. The linebackers will probably be assigned to a running back or a quarterback, a certain player, so that that's how you defend that option offense. Moving to Tennessee a little bit now, obviously both Quentin Dormady and Jarrett Garantano were listed as starting, and I don't think there's any indication that Butch Jones is going to announce a starter. I'd say it'll be probably who goes out on the field the first.
Right.
Michael, what do you think?
I think it'll be Dormady. I think Dormady will be the quarterback just because the experience factor, knowing that, Butch Jones came out earlier and said that he thinks Georgia Tech gained the advantage from practicing 2 hours in the stadium before them. So he's gonna want to go into that game with a quarterback, I guess, with a little more experience, and that's what Dormady will offer. I feel like that's the way he's approaching the game, as who may make the least amount of mistakes, while Garantano probably offers more of the big play ability right now. I think it'll be Dormady that'll go in.
And I think that's the consensus from a lot of writers and a lot of other people around the team, is that Dormady is going to be the guy. Obviously, he's been competing with Jarrett Garantano throughout the offseason for that starting center caller spot. Obviously, we know the narratives. Dormady is Butch Jones talks about his mobility a lot, but he is considered more of a pocket passer, more of a pro-style quarterback. Garantano is likened a lot to Josh Dobbs. He can run the ball, but he's never even taken a college snap. Dormady has served as the backup to Dobbs for 2 years. There's a lot of consensus that says that Dormady will get the start. I don't think Butch Jones is going to announce it. I think it'll literally be who walks out onto the field. My prediction is going to be that Dormady will start. And I think no matter what happens, even if he plays great or plays terrible against Georgia Tech, Butch Jones will not say that he is the starting quarterback, because I think he'll play both of them extensively against Indiana State, which will be much less competition. And then by the third game against Florida, I think by that time he will name officially the starting quarterback. So I think even though a lot of people think it will be Dormady, and maybe that's what Butch Jones is thinking, he's not going to officially announce it until 2 weeks from now. So obviously John Kelly is going to be starting at halfback for Tennessee. We know who he is. He's a guy that played a lot of football last year with Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara. He was behind them, but obviously he came in and played some. We looked at Josh Palmer. He's a guy he's a freshman, right?
Yeah, freshman.
He's a freshman receiver who's actually listed as starting. Butch Jones and a lot of other coaches have been high on him.
Yeah, they've been hyping him up a lot. Even the players, fellow wide receivers, they've all talked about his athletic ability, raving about his athletic ability. He's a player fans really should look forward to seeing in this game.
Mm-hmm. And DeMichael, is there any other positions that you're looking at specifically that could be a position of interest for Tennessee?
Running back, of course. Of course, you got John Kelly, but, last season, Tennessee, they used multiple running backs, and Butch Jones said the offense will not change that much this season, so you could expect to see multiple running backs, but who will fill that role? I mean, you have Tim Jordan, who was the first running back to get his stripe removed, and you have Ty Chandler, who was the more heralded recruit, and he had more of the fanfare coming in, and Tim Jordan was the least recruited of the three running backs that they signed. But mainly, who'll step up and be that second running back that'll come in behind John Kelly, that'll provide some consistency. And also, you got the offensive line too, of course.
Sure, yeah.
The Drew Richmond suspension is a big loss. Marcus Tatum will be coming in, making his first start. And you have Brett Kendrick, who's battled injuries throughout camp and in the past. So, offensive line, there'll definitely be some questions. And so, yeah, that's the main thing. But, yeah, the running back position is the position I'm looking forward to the most.
And another position I'd like to mention is the place kicker position.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I was a kicker in high school, so I get a lot of flack around the Beacon because, I like to talk about the kickers a lot. And for some reason, people don't seem to talk about kickers a lot, but I'm going to right now. So, obviously, Aaron Medley has started since his freshman year. He's going into his senior season. He struggled some. He struggled a lot his sophomore season. Bounced back a little bit last year, but he really didn't attempt many field goals. So Tennessee didn't get to see a really big sample size of him. Now as a senior, there's a new kicker. It's a freshman, Brent Samaglia. Hope I said that right. But he's competing with Medley for the starting job, and that's another position that Butch Jones said is going to come down to game time. He said that they could actually might play both kickers. He said depending on the length of the field goal, they might kick one or the other. He didn't specify which kicker would actually take the kick, who would actually attempt the kick, if it was a longer kick or a shorter kick. He just said that depending on the length, they might kick one or the other. But, DeMichael, what do you think of Medley so far in his career, and do you think that just what do you think of this situation?
Well, just the situation entirely. I've never been like a big fan of the two kicker thing. It was something I remember Alabama used to do it a lot. They had a short place kicker and they had a long place kicker, but I've never been a fan of it simply because with the long kicker, he can't establish a rhythm. So it's tough for the distant kicker to establish a rhythm. It's a tough situation for him.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about obviously place kicking is such a mind game.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd say that even adds a lot more to it, knowing that you could miss one kick and then get yanked from a game. Or you just never know. So I think that's definitely something to look for. I think as everyone out there, I think watching the game, whether you're at the game or watching on TV, I think that's definitely something to look for. So switching gears a little bit here to Michael. Obviously, we saw a lot of college football games yesterday.
Oh yeah.
What games sort of stood out to you?
Well, in the SEC, of course, there were a lot of big time games yesterday. Michigan, Florida. Florida's offense looked very stale. Of course, they had 10 suspended players, top wide receiver suspended, and top running back returning from last season suspended. But still, I mean, they got physically beaten up front.
Mm-hmm.
And even Coach McElwain, he straight up said it. We got whooped.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have said it any better. I mean, you could have had the top wide receiver and top running back. It wouldn't have made much of a difference. The quarterback battle, they didn't get much out of either quarterback. So Florida struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Struggled big time against Michigan.
And obviously, I know one interesting stat from that game was Malik Zaire, who was obviously a transfer from Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very elusive guy, very scrambling running quarterback. He actually had negative 29 rushing yards. And now, obviously, a lot of that was sacks, his offensive line missing blocks. But I think that's one of the big things on him is here's a guy that comes in and he's, this highly rated scrambler and an elusive guy. If he can't be elusive, then, I don't know that his passing brings enough to that offense for him to keep the job over Felipe Franks and then to be a key factor. So that's definitely something that we'll keep an eye on, how Florida does. Obviously, Tennessee plays them in the third game of the season.
Right.
We all know how big of a game that is for the Tennessee Volunteers, so that's definitely something to keep your eye on, and we'll definitely keep our eyes on that. Another game, obviously, was Florida State and Alabama.
Yeah.
Alabama won that game. Jalen Hurts did not have a very good game. I think he struggled statistically. But one thing that I liked out of Jalen Hurts was his mobility. I mean, obviously, we know that that's something Jalen Hurts brings to the table. But I just noticed he made a lot of guys miss in that game last night. And even though he didn't really light up the charts throwing the ball or running or whatever, I think that he really did. I just noticed he made a lot of people miss. DeMichael, what did you see from Alabama?
Well, you have to take into account that Alabama may have played the second best defense in the nation. I'm not going to say they're the second best defense in the nation, but I will say that was top 5 defense in the nation. I mean, Derwin James, the safety for Florida State, might be the best defensive player in the nation, period. So you have to take into account the defense that they played. I mean, Florida State had a strong defense, but Alabama's special teams was the deciding factor. I mean, they blocked the field goal, blocked the punt, and forced the fumble on a kickoff return, and that was the deciding factor. So the score made it look a lot, 24-7 made it look bad, but it was really a really close game.
And another takeaway from that game, obviously Tennessee does not play Florida State.
Right.
They probably won't play them this season unless maybe in some highly ranked bowl game, or maybe if Tennessee happens to make it to the college football playoff, they might see Florida State there. But likely they won't play them.
Right.
But Francois, is it DeAndre
Francois?
Yeah, Florida State's quarterback. He actually injured his leg late in the game. It looked pretty bad. He was pulled down from behind, grabbed by his leg. I don't know if they've announced yet what the injury is or how long he's going to be out, but it's likely that he'll be out for some sort of time, just from what I saw in that injury. It just, obviously our thoughts go out to him. It looked like a pretty bad injury. Obviously, he's one of the better quarterbacks in college football. I'm trying to think of some other scores.
Well, you had LSU, BYU was another game.
Okay.
LSU 27-0, and LSU played 11 freshmen, and they're too deep on defense.
Okay.
And, I mean, BYU didn't cross the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
So that's definitely impressive for a really young defense.
For sure.
And that's another team that Tennessee will face later in the season.
Yeah.
And another game was South Carolina's against North Carolina State.
Oh, yeah.
Bentley looked good. I mean, the defense, they gave up a lot of yards, over 400 yards through the air. South Carolina's defense gave up. But offensively, I mean, Deebo Samuel, he's a monster. I mean, to me, he looks like a Percy Harvin type guy. I mean, he can do it all. He was running the ball. He was catching one-handed passes in the end zone. He ran kickoff back. I mean, he's that playmaker, and it's amazing. I mean, Will Muschamp has an offense in South Carolina, but
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a talent-rich state like Florida.
For sure.
He couldn't really muster offense down there, so.
I mean, and that is another team to keep an eye on. Obviously, Tennessee does play South Carolina. I think with Jake Bentley,
Yeah.
you know, we heard a lot of people around the South Carolina program really praise him last season and talk about, you know, how good, because, I mean, he's a sophomore, right? And
right, yeah.
and as a true freshman last year, he came in, and a lot of people said, oh, he seems really mature, you know, he looks like a good player. I think a lot of other people in the SEC didn't really fully believe it, but I think that, you know, obviously the people around South Carolina have been saying, this guy's legit, he's going to be our guy.
That kid's the real deal.
So I think we are seeing that a little bit, so that's obviously a team to watch for Tennessee. I know Oklahoma State, they scored 59 points. They were playing, was it Tulsa?
Tulsa. Oklahoma State, that's definitely a team I'm looking for to potentially crash the college football playoff race. I mean, Mason Rudolph, one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. He's right there behind Baker Mayfield in the Big 12, and that wide receiver core that they have is something special. I mean, they have 3 legitimate wide receivers that could possibly go to the NFL. But Oklahoma State is definitely legit. That's a team to look out for.
And you mentioned Baker Mayfield. How did Oklahoma do? I don't think I saw that score.
Baker Mayfield, 19 of 20, 3 touchdowns.
Really?
He looked really good, but, of course, the big test for them will be next week against Ohio State.
Yep.
So we'll withhold judgment on that one until next week at the big game.
And I'm glad you mentioned Ohio State, because actually Ohio State opened up with Indiana on Thursday. It was a game. Yeah, it was a game that Indiana was actually leading and was really controlling. Ohio State did come back. Obviously, Mike DeBoard is Indiana's offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee last season. And obviously Tennessee mustered, you know, I think it was the most points in school history, but a lot of fans, I think, were a little bit on DeBoard. For they felt like he was very conservative in his play calling. He would take a lead, then be more conservative. So DeBoard left to go to Indiana. And DeMichael, in watching that game, did you see anything that DeBoard did at Tennessee with Indiana?
I saw differences. I mean, the starting quarterback threw the ball 65 times.
Yeah, that's definitely different.
I mean, could you imagine if Dobbs threw the ball 65 times?
I think he might have against Missouri, but other than that,
yeah, right. But, man, they threw the ball so much. I mean, I think the leading rusher had 7 carries.
Okay.
He gave up. Now, the quarterback did have 2 interceptions, but they were pitching it around a lot. They had 2 receivers with over 10 receptions.
Yeah.
But it was like an air raid offense basically out there for Indiana. So that was something he definitely wasn't going to do at Tennessee with the running back talent they had there. So, yeah.
And I know I was watching the game on TV, and they showed Mike DeBoard a lot, and they talked a lot about his time at Tennessee. Obviously a guy that fans are split on. You know, we talked about that. He did score a ton of points at Tennessee, but then a lot of fans felt like he was too conservative. I mean, you can be on either side of that, but just talking a little bit about what we're going to have in the Beacon coming up. We're actually going to be printing on Tuesday this week. We're going to have we're going to make sure we get you in a recap of the Georgia Tech game. We're actually going to have 2 football features as well and some soccer coverage. So I just want to throw this in there real quick. The Tennessee volleyball team, they just got out of the Diet Coke Classic. They played it this weekend. They were undefeated, I think 4-0 going into that tournament. Or the Classic, and they went 1-2.
They were 3-0, yeah.
3-0,
and went 1-2.
Yeah, so they went 1-2. So obviously they're 4-2 now. I think they won the first match against the UTSA Roadrunners. Then they lost to West Virginia and then Minnesota. Minnesota is actually ranked number 2 in the nation. So I think losing to Minnesota is not a terrible thing on head coach Rob Patrick.
Yeah,
but
Patrick did say he was impressed with the team in that performance. He actually wasn't impressed with the West Virginia performance more so than the performance against the number 2 team in the country.
Right.
But he definitely saw, signs of improvement because it was a doubleheader.
Yeah.
And the number 2 team in the country, Minnesota, was the nightcapper, and he saw improvements in that game. So definitely things you can take on going into Florida next week.
And Tennessee soccer, they're undefeated. still
Yeah.
5-0.
Yep.
They play Middle Tennessee tonight, so that's one of the articles that you will see in the Daily Beacon. I'm gonna get you some coverage of that. But yeah, so that's basically what's gonna be in your Beacon. Make sure to keep. We're obviously printing 2 days a week now, so make sure to keep up with picking up your copy. I think it's been a good change. I think that we're able to get better content in the papers. I think one thing when you print every day, you don't always get as good content, but then when you print 2 days a week, you're able to get more content. We had our football guide come out last week, and Michael, I thought it turned out really well. Yeah, a lot of hard work from us, and then from everyone else on our staff, and from just really a lot of people at the Beacon. So just want to say thanks to everyone who helped out with that, and thanks to all y'all who picked up a copy. And if you haven't picked up a copy yet, for sure they're still out there. Yeah. So make sure you get one. There was an awesome cover by our own Adrian Terricabris. It was a picture of Smokey with the Tennessee flag on the back. It was really cool. So that's going to be it for us today, guys. Thanks for watching Checkerboard Chat. We'll be back here next week with some more Tennessee Vols coverage, obviously with football, other sports. So thank y'all for watching. We really enjoy doing this. We'll see you next week, and sayonara.